Hello, people. My name is Jane. I'm 15. Maybe this expression is too provocative, but my life is a living hell. Recently, I was able to get my ticket to freedom, but I had to kidnap myself to do it. Yes, it sounds really strange, but this was my only way out of this situation. All this happened when I was on vacation with my family in Portugal. You might think, why are you complaining about life if you can afford a vacation in Portugal? But it's not that simple. Despite the wealth of my family, we were very unhappy. It's all because of my father. He's just a tyrant, and he was not a good family man. He drank a lot and was very aggressive. Besides, he wasn't shy about cheating on my mom. At first, he just lied about his work trips and night meetings. My parents were always fighting about it. But then my dad completely lost his conscience and started bringing women back to our house. One day I came back from my grandmother's and found signs of some kind of party at home. There were bottles and trash everywhere, and girls I didn't know were walking around the house. My father had completely lost his mind. Of course, this led to another big fight, and I tried to persuade my mother to leave him, but this was absolutely impossible. My father threatened that if she filed for divorce, he would take full custody of me and my mother would be left without a penny in her pocket because of their prenuptial agreement. So she was literally chained to this maniac. The only person I was close with was my governess, Lisa. But a couple of weeks before leaving for Portugal, a disaster struck. My father was having another party and he started hitting on her. I was sitting in my room listening to music on my headphones so I wouldn't hear the sounds from his terrible party. But suddenly I saw an ambulance flashing outside of our house. It turned out that our governess was allergic to alcohol, but my father still forced her to drink. She started feeling bad and my father had to call an ambulance. She's fine now. Plus, my dad paid her good money to keep her quiet about the accident and doubled her salary. He was used to solving all of his problems this way. Then our party, consisting of my family, my governess, and my father's guard, arrived in Portugal. We rented a large villa and my father took a trip on the wild side again. He would come home in the early morning, barely able to stand, and start another argument. One night when I returned with my mother from shopping, we found a giant party with a bunch of strangers in our villa. I tried to ask my father to stop all this because I was tired and wanted to sleep, but he yelled at me and told me to shut my mouth and go to my room. No, it couldn't go on like this. I had to do something. Yes, I know it sounds strange and even dangerous, but I decided to kidnap myself. Here was a plan I came up with. I was going to hide from my father and demand a ransom from him. After I got the money, I could get my mother out of this slavery and start living in peace. But for all this, I needed the help of my governess. I realized that this request was very unusual, so I offered her a large percentage of everything we could get from my dad. Fortunately, she agreed because she needed money. Plus, it was a great opportunity to get back at my father for years of hard work and the recent incident he put her through. I was supposed to go on a little outing with my governess, but instead, we rented an apartment at the very edge of town. For security reasons, we threw away our phones so that no one could track us and paid for the rent in cash to leave no trace in a bank account. But the most important part is something we left at home. It was a note we made from magazine clippings. It said that Lisa and I were taken hostage and my father had to leave a bag of money in a designated place. To make it more convincing, we even took a photo of me being tied up and crying. The most important thing in this case was that my father did not go to the police. Otherwise, our plot would be quickly discovered. So we gave him another condition. If my father called the police, he'd probably never see me again. He had 3 days to leave the money. All the preparations were made, and Lisa and I went to our secret place. Most of all, I was worried about my mother. I had to keep our plan a secret because my father might be able to push her and find out the whole truth. And it was definitely better to not irritate him. He got really evil when he was angry. Lisa and I were practically isolated during those few days. We didn't leave the house because we could have been seen, or we could have been caught by surveillance cameras on the street. Other than that, we didn't have phones or the internet. So all we could do was talk to each other, and I was happy to get to know Lisa better. It turned out that she had a very difficult fate. She came from a very poor family and wanted to go to college, but education costs an incredibly huge amount of money, and she had to work at various difficult jobs. Now I understood why Lisa had tolerated my father's behavior and why she had agreed to this adventure with me. That's how we spent those 3 days, and it was time to get our money. In the note, we said that my father had to leave the bag with cash in a locker at a train station and set the code, the date of my birth. So Lisa and I put on our inconspicuous clothes, hooded sweatshirts and glasses, and went to the train station. Wow, I was so excited at that moment. Money and freedom were so close. I just had to open the locker. In my head, I was already hearing the drum roll. And it was empty. What the hell? There was no money in it, no note of reply, just emptiness. I didn't understand what was going on. Did someone steal the money from the locker? I don't know. Maybe my father went to the police, but then they would have found us at that time. Maybe he just ignored it. Yes, that seemed like the most plausible option. But I wasn't going to put up with it, and I wanted to go after my father and get my cash. So on the way home, we bought a phone and a SIM card. I was going to call my father and start threatening him. I prepared a speech where I said terrible things about myself. Then I thought I should have scared him. I changed my voice using an app and dialed my father's number. My heart was pounding in my chest. When he picked up the phone, I started to speak, but a second later he interrupted me and just started laughing in my face. He didn't care that his daughter had been kidnapped. He wasn't going to give anyone a dime for my life. The worst thing is that he said he didn't care if I was returned to him in parts. And then he just hung up the phone. Damn it, we were in a lot of trouble at the time. For another couple of hours, we just sat and thought about what to do next. I imagined myself and Lisa coming home and my father destroying us on the doorstep. Yes, there was no turning back after this deception. I decided that we had to run by any means possible. But I couldn't leave my mother with this freak. I had to get her out. So we created a new plan, waited until dark, and drove toward my dad's villa. We sat for a long time in the bushes near the fence and tried to understand what was happening in the house. Suddenly, we heard a car start and drive out of the villa. This was our chance to go inside, get some things, and find a way to contact my mom. We slipped into the house, and what I saw there struck me to the core. My mom was just lying on the couch, holding her face and crying. It seemed that she was just heartbroken. I walked over to her and took her by the hand, and when she opened her eyes, she was so scared it was like seeing a ghost. I calmed her down and told her everything would be fine. Then I noticed a bruise on her face. It turned out that she was having a big fight with my dad this whole time and begged him to pay the ransom, but he just refused. And just now, they had just had the most violent argument. You can guess how it ended. We had to get out of there fast, so I told Lisa to take my mom to our apartment, and I stayed to try to steal something from my dad's villa. I started searching the entire house for money or anything worth having. I found my mother's jewelry, some of my father's watches, but nothing else. I was sure I was missing something, and I turned my parents' bedroom upside down, but my search was unsuccessful. Then I heard a car pull up to the house. I went downstairs, but my father and his guard were already in the house. He saw me and started yelling at me. I tried to escape through the back entrance, but I was caught as soon as I ran out into the street. It was over. I lost. Then I just sat on the couch and listened to my father yell and insult me. It turns out that he knew that it was fake kidnapping because he had been waiting for this kind of a step from me or from my mother for a very long time. Half an hour later, the guard brought my mother and Lisa to the villa. My father was in a rage and just destroyed us with his screaming. And now we have to deal with the consequences. I feel very sorry for Lisa because I dragged her into our family feud. And my mother, now my dad, is particularly cruel to her. I've been under house arrest for a month now, and I keep wondering why my father won't let us go. What kind of love is this that causes so much suffering? I don't know. But despite all this, I have a small ray of hope. Lisa was a good person, and she didn't want to leave me in the lurch. We are in touch with her, and she has contacted social services for help. She's ready to testify against my father and prove that the conditions that we live in are just terrible. I hope that justice will be on our side and my mother and I can finally live happily.